dignity of Miriam Meeks. And now I get to introduce a cartoon character. Somewhere between Tigger and the Cookie Monster. We went out last night, Sejal, Kaylin, Kelly, Stephanie and I, and this is what David ate. They can attest to this. 2 orders of fried green tomatoes, crab soup, crab claws, gumbo, shrimp, oysters, 4 gin and tonic, that's with sapphire gin, and key lime pie.
All right.
Catfish, that was my, I've got the
You got the man?
David Feige is a true believer with an immense talent. He is an author. He's about to publish a book or write a book. Little Brown is written. I'm reading it. Little Brown is publishing. He is what we are supposed to be in terms of where his dedication and work is. He's my friend. He is here to prove that he actually owns a tie. He needs to talk to us about those words.
I killed Johnny Rogers. I've killed before. I'll go again. Every one of you knows me. I'm what makes your blood boil. What makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. I'm what makes you run faster than you knew that you could run. I'm what makes you sweat. Makes you tremble. I killed Albert Rogers. Now I could have gotten up and thanked you, right? Could have gotten up and said, gosh, you've all been wonderful students, and thanks so much for coming in and listening to this lecture. Gee, that was sure nice. But that would suck, wouldn't it? There aren't a lot of yeses and nos in this kind of work. Each one of you is going to go back to your crazy, unique jurisdiction and become your crazy, unique lawyer. If you learned anything in 2 weeks, it's hopefully to find something that is more you than you ever were before that you can take back and make bigger and better than you were when you go back to your crazy jurisdiction, God knows wherever it is. And like I said, there aren't a lot of rights and wrongs in this business, but there is one that I believe. Don't ever waste the opportunity to tell a story to a jury by getting up and saying thank you to the judge who's looking to sentence your client, the prosecutor who spent his time trying to put your client in prison, or the jury who's going to decide their fate. If you absolutely must, if you're one of those people who simply can't help but be polite, just do me one favor after you hear this lecture. Make me a pledge that at least you'll start with a story. And after you get to, I'm fear, stop and say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being so patient throughout this trial. And do your thanks then. But please don't waste that opportunity. Because you're going home to people who need you. People who will stand by your side and whose fates you will hold in your hand. And your closing argument is the opportunity, your last opportunity, to do what you can to settle it. It's important. Don't lose. If you've learned anything else through the 2 weeks, I hope that you know at this point that a lot of what we do is about storytelling. So yes, I'm going to talk to you about closing arguments and all of that stuff, but really, I want to spend some time talking to you about storytelling, about how to tell a compelling story. Because more than any other place, your closing argument is the sum of everything you've done. And it is the story that will lead a jury to acquit your client. And it's because the result is so very important that the process need be so good. So how do you tell a story? Okay. You use your theory and your theme. If any one of you has survived 2 weeks in making without having a theory of your case, God knows you have done something wrong. You are going to enunciate, and it's not just here, it's in every case you try. You've got to have a theory. You've got to have a theme. And those theories and themes will guide the structure of your summation. The theory will lead, and the themes will fill out the flesh of the summation. Ideally, by forming a tagline, or two, or three, that will be repeated throughout your summation. That's what makes it effective. If one of my themes, now, those of you who've been with me, repetition matters. Repetition counts. Repetition builds up in a jury's mind the thing that you're saying. Repetition is important. What should you be repeating? Your theory and your theme. But what do you fill it out with? You fill it out with the story. Now you can tell a story a whole bunch of different ways, right? What did I do? I started out in a completely different place, right? What do we normally do? We normally say, ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard, and let me tell you that so-and-so is a liar because blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, that's all very good. But what if you did something different? What if you channeled a different character? What if you showed rather than told? What if, just for a moment, you were Roger Moss, sitting there, I danced my ass off for hours a night, sweating from this disgusting age, doing 3 sets under the hot lights for $20. And I've got to work not one night, 5 nights, 5 nights of that. What do I make? All right, $100 a check, $5,000. It's a week or 2. It's like 9 months of shaking my ass, right? Okay. Wow, 9 months of shaking your ass. Like that's interesting. Get inside people's heads. There's more flexibility in summation than there is in any other part of the trial. And that means you can do all kinds of really, really fun things. Now, what are the things that make a story compelling? Detail. And if I can impress upon you one thing, I will impress upon you the importance of otherwise irrelevant narrative detail. How many of you, everybody here has done a bail argument, right? Everybody, right? Okay. Clay? Since you're right in the middle, you're getting picked on. Okay, your client is a busboy, and he works as a busboy, right? And you want to bring that to the judge's attention. You want to make a regular bail application. How would you do it?
And bail application?
Yeah.
Yeah, my client's bail is a busboy at such restaurant, he makes such $1 a night, works so many hours a week, he's not.
There's no other, and then you go on to something else. How many of us would do that? Just about everybody, right? You'd say, my client's a busboy, this is what he does, this is where he goes. Okay. Now, what if you said, just like, Your Honor, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, in the back of the Waffle House, my client carries tubs, plastic tubs of dirty dishes from 16 tables back into the back every day for $4 an hour, or $7.75 an hour, whatever it is, right? Which is more compelling? Second, let me ask you this. Does it matter from a legal point of view whether the dishes are dirty? Does it matter that there are 14 tables? Do you care that it's a Waffle House? No. Do you care that it's a plastic tub rather than a metal tray that he uses? Does that have any legal significance at all? Is it effective? Yes. Why? Paints a picture, right? It makes it clear that this guy is like a busboy. Okay, it's a busboy. Stop. Close your eyes. Ask your client or imagine what that is like. Because if you can make your client just that little bit more human, if he can understand the sweat and the grunting and the weight of the plastic tubs and day in and day out and crappy eggs and spaghetti and hash browns slathered all over the place, and that's what he does for $7.75 an hour, that makes him human. And if you make your client human, you've got a much better chance of getting him out of jail and getting him home at the end of the trial. If you're able to tell a story that will grab the jury, that will explain the essential humanity of your client, or even just tell a compelling story about why your client did what your client did, you've got a much better chance of getting them home at the end of the day. And that's what this is all about. So how do we come up with detail? It's really, really hard. And naturally, we don't do it, right? Naturally, we'll sit there and we're like, well, he's a busboy. You have to go beyond that. And this is going to sound really weird. You have to actually give yourself permission to imagine and to feel. And it's the thing that we don't do, but it is the thing that if we were to do, make us so powerful as advocates. We were talking today in one of the groups about Albie's tattoo, the one that said death, right? Now you can tell a story about that tattoo. In the cross-examination, you can do it a couple of ways, right? You can say, well, and what did that tattoo say? He had a tattoo, right? Yes, what did it say? It said death. Okay, thank you very much. Or you can go on and you can say, what did that tattoo say? It said death. Or you can stop and close your eyes and take a second to imagine what it took to get that tattoo, right? And you can tell the story that everything you need to know about Albert Rogers is tattooed right there on his left bicep. That tattoo is the story of his life, his death, and his character. Because Albert Rogers made a decision. Because he went out one morning, he got in his car, and he drove a small, tumble-down tattoo parlor. And he looked through designs, all kinds of things. He looked through flowers. But Albert Rogers didn't pick the flowers. He looked at hearts. Albert didn't pick a heart. He looked at designs as abstract Eastern designs, some of which meant compassion, friendship, love. Albie Rogers didn't pick any of those. Instead, he wanted a word. And of all the beautiful and glorious words in the English language, Albie Rogers had his heart set on one. One word for which he was willing to endure the pain of a needle going in and out of his arm, tattooing in ink, permanently and forever on his arm, one word, his word. His one word in the English language, and what was it? That's how it was. Okay? Now, do we care again that it was a tumble-down tattoo parlor? Really, do we give a shit? No. Do we know for sure that there was, in fact, a hummingbird as an option? No. Do we know whether or not there were hearts? I tell you, people, we can be pretty sure there was a heart option. I know, I've seen a couple. Everybody could get a heart if they wanted to, right? What we do know is that any word he could spell, he could have tattooed on his arm. And the way we think about this is to close our eyes and understand what it means to make a choice. And to convey to the jury what it means to make a choice. Okay, and it brings me to the next thing, because telling the story is not enough. Explaining the situation isn't enough. There's a concept I want to share with you called bringing it home. And it's something these two know a lot about, because I yell about it all the time. What do we do in most of our summations, right? We say, the officer, and you know the officer lied, because one time he said this, and the other time he said that. Okay. Or, but that, what are some of our like weird stock lawyerly refrains? That doesn't make sense. And that doesn't make sense. And that's not right. And that's how you know he lied, right? Okay. These are exhibitions. Here's a South Park that's really, really funny, but I won't get it. What you need to do at the end of every point is you need to bring it home. All the way home to your theory of the case. And all the way home to the inescapable fact that you want the jury to reach at the end. There is only one fact, right? And what is it? Not guilty. That's right, not guilty. Client's not guilty. That's it. And so it is not enough merely to point out, that's how you know he lied. Or, that just doesn't make sense. Without adding the following. And those of you in a group tomorrow, I'm going to be watching for this. You need to say, it doesn't make sense because he's not guilty. It didn't happen that way, right? We usually get into the big thing, we say, and it just didn't happen that way. It didn't happen that way because he's not guilty. It didn't happen that way, or that, or he lied and shaded the truth. And he's not guilty. Everything has to come all the way home. You have to bring it home to non-guilt. Every time after time. That needs to be one of your refrains. And so when you get to the part that you make a point, right, you have to bring that home. Okay. Now, we've already talked about getting creative. Point of view. The thing that I did at the beginning was what's called a point of view shift. You're telling the story from a different point of view. There's a bazillion of those. Get creative. Remember, nobody goes to jail at the end of the day tomorrow. Nobody. This is your chance to do something really interesting and really different. Experiment with it. See how it feels. Okay? Be the fire hydrant. Be the lamppost. Be the gun. Be fear. Be the witness. Be anybody you want. But if you're going to do it, think through what that means and try to come up with something interesting about that point of view that conveys your message to the jury. Okay? Don't be afraid. Really. Use tomorrow. And you know what's interesting? You can do this. Judges won't stop you. You have a lot of latitude in summation. Make the most of it. This does not apply to you federal defenders who are bound to your podium. But those of you who are working in state court, right? You got a lot of room to move, don't you? In summation, it's that one wonderful moment. You can talk to your jury. You can look them in the face. If you're really, really gutsy, you can call them by name and say, Ms. Prescott, that's why you know he's not. Gutsy, but if you've got somebody with you and you've got a point, think about it. You can get close to your jury, but not just that. You can go to all kinds of other places, right? How many of you have transcripts, right? How many of you have transcripts that you get throughout the trial that you mark up and you're going to use, right? Because you want to show that you impeach somebody? No? Some? Many? Okay. To the extent you can afford it, it's a great thing to do, particularly with the critical witnesses. And what do? Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Officer so-and-so. He got right here. He sat down in this chair. And you know what he said to you? This is what he said. How far away were you when you saw the shooting? Answer. 150 feet. You remember that? He sat right here. And he said, okay? Get up in the witness box. Cite that critical bit of testimony. Emphasize it. And if you don't want to do that, think of another way to emphasize it. Is there anybody here who does not have either a Kinko's within 50 miles or a poster maker? This is a little last minute and it's small. But that's okay. It's fine. It's a little bigger. And you know what? Now that I think about it, here, if you have a little problem, solve it. Bring it up to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to draw your attention. I want you to remember something that Mike Donnelly said during this case. Because it is so very important. It's one of the ways, I'm going to bring it home now. It's one of the ways that you know my client's not guilty. You remember? I was cross-examining him, and I asked, you just said that sometimes you don't challenge somebody on a fact they give you in a statement, right? And he answered, that's correct. And I asked him, okay, because some things have the ring of truth. Answer, yes, sir. Other things don't have the ring of truth. That's right. Those things you challenge. And you know what he said? How many of you remember this? Remember this? It's real important. You're allowed to say what's real important, okay? Because it's real important. He said, well, no. Sometimes these things need to be corroborated by physical evidence. That's what he said. I'll leave that right up here for you, just in case everybody's forgetting. Now, you can do that. And in this particular case, I was basically trying a lack of evidence case. And I was arguing that he didn't corroborate anything in the statement. So you get a gift like that, put it up there. Right? Okay. Next thing. How many times are we in a courtroom where the prosecution is stacked up? Tons of scary physical evidence. The guns and the drugs and all of that crap, right? And you're like, oh man, I'm really petrified by that. There's a whole box of really bad stuff on their table. And what do we tend to do? If the box is here, We tend to stand as far away as possible so that we are not dealing with the box of bad stuff. That is the wrong instinct. Do you think for a moment that because you stand over here, they're going to forget that it's over there? Do you think for a moment that the prosecutor is going to go, oh, he stood over there, I completely forgot I had a big box of good evidence? No. They're going to remember it. So what do? Don't be afraid of it. Pick it up. Pick it up. Throw it around. I'm not scared of that. Right? If you're doing something, you say, remember we talked about the importance of fingerprints? He says we should take his word for it that this very large bag of pine needle weed belonged to my client. But I asked him about fingerprints. Remember that? Of course. And what did he say? We didn't take fingerprints from that bag. Throw that shit around. Come on. Show that it, be disdainful of their evidence. Don't be afraid of it. You've got to have something to say. If you have spent your summation avoiding their evidence, they're as good as won. On the other hand, if you anticipate what they are going to say, which is another point I am going to make and ask you to do, think about what they are going to say. Bad facts don't go away. They never do. They stay there, and the prosecutor remembers them, and I guarantee you he will bring them up. But what can you do? You can anticipate. Oh, and by the way, that's how you know my client's not guilty. Bring it home. Repetition. Back to this for just a second. Anticipate what they're going to say. And what do we do once we've anticipated it? Well, we've got to have something to say, right? We've obviously thought through our case. We've spent all this time trying the case, so we've got to have something to say. So set it up and say it. You know what, folks? We'll sit down in a few minutes. Mr. Prosecutor's going to get up. He's going to talk to you. And, you know, he's going to grab this bag. He's going to wave it around and say, oh, this marijuana was my client's. That's what he's going to do. That's what he's going to do. He's going to wave it around. All I'm asking you to do is remember that part of the testimony about the fingerprints. And while he's waving it around, talking about how it proves it's his client, just ask, where's the fingerprints? That's how you know it's not guilty. Okay, well, I anticipate. Now, what's going to happen? Now, what's the prosecutor doing? He's sitting there going, God damn it, he took my arm. I was going to wave it around. No, I can't, because it'll seem like I'm doing what he said I was going to do. Shit! Okay? That is how they think, because they're really, like, and they're so linear. And what's really funny is sometimes they'll do it anyway, and you'll see the jury going, he said he's going to do that. Okay? And so, don't be afraid. You must be bold. You have to be bold. You have to go in there. You have to embrace the worst facts and jujitsu them right back on their ass. Anticipate them, say you're anticipating them, say this is what the prosecutor's going to say, and then look, sometimes we don't have much, but we always have something. If you've done your job, you always have something, and sometimes you're trying really shitty cases. Well, that's okay. We're just trying a shitty case. That's all right. Do your best, come up with the best thing you can, and spin it, because what will happen every single time is the prosecutor will fall into that trap, and what they will almost always do is they will then try to rebut you. And if you have gotten them responding to you through their entire summation, they're off their game, they're not sticking to their game plan because they can't, because it's just doing what you said they were going to do, right? And you're looking good because you're telling a compelling story of why your client is
Not guilty.
good. Does the same thing go for co-opting the judge? Oh, you bet it does. We had somebody who judge rushes through the jury instructions, everybody consents, and like kind of takes you over while he's doing it. Now, what do we know about jury instructions? There's always something good in there for us, isn't it? Isn't there?
Yeah.
There's literally always something good. Even if it's just reasonable doubt language, or ID language, or something. We've got to have a hook. If we are trying our case, by the way, I just want to tell you something. Before I start any case, one of the very first things I do is I go and print out the jury instructions, and I read them. You would be amazed. There's all kinds of shit in there that you're like, oh damn, that's a specific intent. He had to think he was bald. These are all kinds of great ideas. It's really good. And I encourage you to do it. Okay. So if you go through, and if you're summing up and you haven't read the jury instructions, well, I'm very disappointed. Don't do it again. There will always be a few phrases, a few great phrases. And how do you emphasize them, right? You always want to emphasize them. Put it on the judge. So now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to sit down in a few minutes and you're going to hear a rebuttal summation from the prosecutor. When he's done, the judge is going to instruct him. He's going to say all kinds, he's going to tell you the elements of the crime. He's going to tell you all kinds of things. You know what else he's going to tell you? And he's going to tell you that, and then just fill in the blank here. You know, blah, 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 blah. You know, pick it, some ID issue, whatever your issue is, whatever phrase that you want to hear, right? Say, and you know what? He may say that real loud. He may say it soft. It may come in the middle of a paragraph. It may come while you're going to sleep because there's so much other stuff going on, but he will say these words. I beg you to listen. And when you hear them, I want you to remember some fact about the case that fits that instruction. Because that's how you know he's not guilty. Listen to those words. You'll hear them. I promise you, if you listen close enough, they will come out of the judge's mouth. You will hear them. And when you do, just ask you to remember what you said. Okay, now what's going to happen? If you're, what do you normally do during jury instructions?
Sit
Sleep,
there.
doodle, right? I ask, try this just once, and look over to the jury when the judge finally says that thing that you asked them to pay attention to. And you know what they'll do? They'll go, they'll like, oh, I heard it. Even if it's like, just because they want you to know that they're paying attention. Jurors want you to pay attention. They want to be in on the loop. They want to be involved in what's going on. You'll be amazed. So take that, what does that do? It co-opts the judge. It makes it seem like the judge is supporting what you say. We spend all our time never talking about jury instructions in summation. Why do we do that? That's crazy, right? Pick the good phrase. Use the good phrase. Incorporate it into your summation. Point it out. And you'll be amazed because it will sound like the judge is backing you up. You'll be like, and of course, you got to do it too. You're going to be like, right? They're like, it's good. It's amazing. Okay. So, we've got, all right. So we have, I'm just checking this. Incorporate the jury instructions, right? Anticipate the prosecutor's summation. Narrative detail. Bringing it home. And now, what's everybody's NCDC very favorite? Oh, I heard it. Go ahead, you're right. And, well, no, then I misheard. Demonstrative evidence. Okay, I know, groan. But, here's something that I particularly love to do. How many times have you tried, how many times have you tried those cases where you've got nothing to do except talk about what there isn't, right? How many times have you been in that situation? See now, okay, look around. Did you see what everybody just did? When I put that thing up there? Where were you looking?
At the post.
Every single one of you was like, ooh, I want to see what that says. That's the point. I don't have to give you a whole lecture on it. That's the point. Everybody goes, what does that say? What's that about? Now, I will tell you, this is one page of a 4-page chart that went through a case in which all I had was a lack of evidence. They didn't have, what they didn't have, because frankly, my client was arrested in the apartment with 2 guns, and the bloody duct tape, and the complainant's ID bracelet in his pocket, and the complainant's wife, who he supposedly kidnapped, going, he kidnapped me! This was, as one might describe it, a bad case, in which there was the biggest shoebox of bad shit I've ever seen. It was horrible. What prosecutors will, as they're inclined to do, when they've got a case that strong, they just go with it, right? And I was left playing defense, and nothing but pure defense. I spent the entire time talking about what they didn't have. My entire cross was, the box of guns, that proves nothing. Who knows whose guns those were? That idea, it wasn't where they said it was. How could they possibly prove it was? That bloody duct tape, whose blood was it? Did they test the hair? Did they? Well, let's see. They also got rubber gloves. Did you get any DNA from that? Right? It was literally an entire month-long trial of going, they didn't do that. And this was one of 4 pages designed to illustrate that very point. Okay? Because all I had was what they didn't do. And now, it may seem, it certainly to them seemed insane that anybody would challenge what they didn't do, because what they did do was have a big-ass box of guns, somebody going, he kidnapped me, bloody duct tape and every single thing else, right? But they actually were so fucking arrogant that they literally never bothered to test anything. And so they didn't test the bullets, they didn't test the gun, they didn't test the rope, and they destroyed it. God, this is a safe destroyer. They didn't even voucher a whole bunch of things. Now, were any of them really that material? His baseball cap? No, probably not, but still, you're supposed to voucher things. And any crime scene detective will tell you that you're supposed to voucher stuff, right? You're supposed to save everything, just in case. Who knows whose hairs might have been in that baseball cap? Right? So what I did at the end, was I made this chart about that big box. And each time we had something, we picked it up and threw it down. That's how you know my client's not guilty. Okay? So what do we do? Can any of you, or most of you, or some of you see this? I will describe it as we go through. This is another one of those things that anybody with a chart, with a simple computer, can make, and a printer, and a Kinko's can make, that is very, very effective. What it does is it demonstrates, it's good demonstrative evidence. You could actually use it to cross, but I like to use them in summation, right? Along with things like this, excerpts from testimony. I often go in with something like a dozen or more big poster boards, some of which are testimony, some of which are themes, and some of which are things, charts like this, about what they did or they didn't do. And so you say, ladies and gentlemen, you go through blah, 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 the whole background, right? About how evidence is critical. Evidence is important. Evidence can tell you something. But what do you want? You want them to preserve it and test it and bring it to you so that you have some objective, credible basis to believe what they want you to believe. Now, they recovered a nylon rope in this case. They recovered it in Glenn Wiggins' car. So of course they saved it, right? Well, destroyed. And they recovered a wallet. They got Glenn Wiggins' wallet. Of course they saved it. Oh, no. Actually, they destroyed it. And his jacket? Well, they destroyed that too. Oops. And the rubber gloves? Those aren't around. Not the one in the house. Not the one in the car. Baseball cap from the house. They bothered to check for hair. They bothered to do any DNA analysis. No, actually they just destroyed it. And those ski masks that you heard so much about. Y'all remember the ski masks? Yeah, remember that, Mr. President? The whole, they say that, no, actually, they didn't. They destroyed it. Okay, now, I just want to stop for 1 second. Theme, right? Repetition. And it's all made really easy because of the structure of this, right? I know exactly where I'm going. I have a cheat sheet, basically notes that I can read from while I'm sitting here summing up, and all I'm doing is checking boxes. Is that effective, box checking? Do we give a shit that they didn't keep the nylon rope? I mean, maybe. We could certainly make an argument. What about the wallet, or the jacket, or the rubber? Yeah, I mean, it's something. But cumulatively, what does it seem like? These are reckless fuckers willy-nilly destroying evidence. They don't give a shit. And frankly, we have nothing else to go on except that. So you have to find a way to make it as big as possible. And what I just did, what I will continue to do in a second, was designed to make it as big as possible. How do you do it? You break down your case into the tiniest constituents, right? These things don't seem like they should make a difference themselves. But when you aggregate them, when you put them together, when you analyze the case for your summation, right? And what do we do when we sit down to do our summation? We We go through the transcripts. We go through our notes. We go through all the stuff that we did. For those of you who have been wonderful in using the whiteboards or the notepads and having witnesses write stuff down, right? Do you remember? Have you all done that? Right? Oh, you know, Albie drank all the time. Here, write that down. Albie drank all the time. You want to pull those babies out in summation. You don't want to just say, do you remember what Regina Rogers told you about Albie's drinking? Right? She told you he drank all the time. Which is more effective, that or do you remember what Regina Rogers said when she talked about Albert's drinking? She sat right here. Okay, because what are we doing? We're using the courtroom, right? She sat right here. She told you all about it. And what she said. Imagine this is not on the easel. Waching! Okay. You don't even have to say it. You just point to it and nod, and every one of those jurors will go, he drank all the time. Right? Boom. Going back to this, same thing with the structure. You want to get every little bit, and you want to aggregate every little bit until it becomes a compelling narrative of innocence. Right? You know what? Continuing for a second. So why wouldn't they save that 9/11? Because they didn't care. Because they just didn't care. That's how you know my clients is. They didn't care about the wallet. They didn't care about the jacket. They didn't care about the rubber glove from the car, or the rubber glove from the house, or the baseball cap, or the ski mask. They didn't care enough to bring in the evidence. They didn't want to bring in the evidence. They knew it would show my client. And what did they get? They got some stuff. They got beef. What do you do with the beef? You hold on to it, right? So of course, you might expect that they would test it for fingerprints, but you'd be wrong. Or you might expect that the ridges on the plastic surface of the beef were so wonderful for retaining sweat or skin cells, might have been tested for DNA, but you'd be wrong. You might have thought the same thing about that identification bracelet. Remember that one? Remember that one, the one they say they got right from my client? I'm sorry, let's do this even better. Remember? The one they said they got from my client's pocket. This little ID bracelet is made of smooth gold. Gold smooth enough to retain fingerprints, or not. Or DNA, or not. Tell you that my client is, right? And you continue all the way down. Cell phone, rubber glove, knife, gun 1, gun 2, packing tape, hat, money. All of this. This was 4 pages. And I'm not even going to do this whole page for you. But do you get the cumulative effect? At the end, there's no check all over the place. There is not a single thing that is a yes. There is no, it seems like, all of a sudden, there's no evidence. There's nothing. The items themselves, right, are worthless. The tests are valuable. That's our point, right? And at the end of this, they've got nothing. And what do? When you're done, do you take that down? No. No, 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 no. During your summation, do you challenge the prosecutor overtly to refute any of that? Oh, yes, yes, yes. Right? You say, you know what? When I'm done, I'm going to sit down. This guy right here is going to stand up. And I'll tell you what he's going to do right away. Okay, because what do? We anticipate, right? Anticipate. What is he going to do right away? Uh-huh. So what do? We don't just leave it up, we say it. He's going to get up here and he's going to tear this down because he can't stand it staring you in the face, because he can't deal with it. He's going to take it down because he knows that that is the truth of this case. But there is not a single shred of objective evidence that ties my client to this crime. That's why he's not guilty, and that's why he's going to take it down. He's going to jump up and he's going to take it down. You watch. Now, one of two things is going to happen. He's either going to jump up and take it down, in which case the jury's like, or he's going to jump up and go, I'm not taking it down, right? And he's going to go on, in which case the jury's still going to be sitting there looking, waiting for him to deal with it, and there's nothing he can do to deal with it except say, but we do have all of these things, and that's how you know that. But then you've reframed the entire summation, right? You've put him on the defensive in a case where he has every reason to be on the offensive. You've reframed it by forcing it into this structure and then overtly challenging it. Now, we're going to do a little repetition. So what do we do when we do this? Vis-a-vis jury instructions. Later in the summation, we say, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm going to sit down in a few minutes, the judge is going to instruct you on the law, and he's going to tell you, you can consider the evidence and the lack of evidence. I want you to think about those three words. Lack of evidence. They're going to come out of beloved Judge Donaldson's mouth in just a few minutes. And it may be in the middle of a sentence, and he may say it loud, and he may say it soft, but he's going to say those three words, lack of evidence. He's going to tell you, you can consider the lack of evidence. And when he does, look at this chart. When he does, look at what was saved. Nothing. And look at what was destroyed. Look at what they did test. And what they didn't. Lack of evidence. You can consider it. He's going to tell you so. Okay, the judges hate this because they know they're being co-opted, but it's perfectly proper. It's perfectly proper. It is the law. You're allowed to sum up on the facts in the law. There's no dispute that that's what he's going to say. Most of you, those of you who wish to be cautious, get a copy of his instructions beforehand. They'll give them to you, right? Yeah. So get it. Take a highlighter to it. Highlight it. Put it on a poster. Okay? So what have we done? Right there. We have reframed the discussion. We have co-opted the prosecutor by issuing an explicit challenge. We have carried around their crappy bag of pine needle evidence, thrown it around contemptuously, showing that we are not afraid of it, right? And built our theory and our theme into something that is a compelling narrative of innocence, right? That is only part of the summation, what I did there. The other part is the storytelling, right? And it's not enough to just do that. You have to tell the story. That's where it begins and that's where it ends, okay? It's not enough to just do this. You have to reframe. You have to co-opt. You have to throw around the evidence. You have to anticipate. You have to repeat. Notice how many times I've said anticipate? Notice how many times I've said co-opt? Why? Because hopefully, when you leave here, you'll remember it. Just like our juries. Okay. Oh, by the way, you also have to believe what you say. You know, I give this a tiny bit of short shrift, but it's really, really true. If at the end of the trial you haven't convinced yourself that your client really, really, really needs to go home, you have a major problem and you need to rethink the case. Okay? You are the first juror. You've got to convince yourself. You have to find a way. Because if you haven't done it, you're going to get up there, and no disrespect, but you're going to suck. Okay? And you're going to suck because we convey an enormous amount of information about how we're feeling and what's going on inside when we talk to people, right? How many times, you know, every single one of you has had an argument with some loved one and said, you want to go see Raiders of the Lost Ark? And they go, sure. And what they really mean is, not if you killed me, right? They don't, like, you all know that. You all know that sure means not if you killed me, right? Jurors know the same thing. They're very canny, and there are 12 of them. And so even if you get one or two who's adult, believe me, there are going to be a few on the other end who are getting every single thing that's going on in your sweet little brain. And so it's absolutely critical that you find a way to believe what you're saying and invest in the summation. Throughout the trial, you will get gifts. You will find things that will make you excited and think, shit, this is what I want to tell them. Seize those things and believe in them. Use them to convince yourself and take them and build the story around them. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what case you're trying. It doesn't matter what kind of case you're trying. You will have something to say at the end. Use detail. I'm going to say it again and again and again. Use detail. Practice bits of your summation. Stop. Whenever you find yourself describing something in a few words, right? Any phrase. It was a big room. It was a hot day. He was wearing heavy clothes. Bonnie struggled home. Okay, a big room. When he testified in the grand jury, what can we do with that?
When he
Think
got in
about
the chair.
Every single one of those phrases. Close your eyes. Take a moment. Imagine it. When Miss Jones walked in through those big marble doors downstairs, got into the elevator and went to the 4th floor. Walked in to a room much like this one, with 23 strangers staring her in the face, and a prosecutor and a court stenographer. When she stepped up onto the little dais and took her seat, put her right hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God. She testified under oath. This is what she said. Okay, which is more effective? That, or when she testified in the grand jury, she said, which? Why? Does it matter that she sat up on a little dais? No? Or yes? No, who gives a shit? Does it matter that it was marble? Does it matter that it was 23 people? None of it matters. It matters because now you understand what it was. So don't ever let yourself describe these simple phrases with simple phrases. If you're one of those people who writes out your summation, by the way, I'm anti-notes. I think everybody does it the same way, but I think if you're using notes, you tend to stand there and get wedded to them and read them kind of with a monotone, kind of not. I would urge you to practice tomorrow without notes, just to see how you do. I guarantee if you know your case, you'll do much, much better than you think you will. What I like to do is you can write out summations, whittle them down to talking points. See? My talk. Right? But as you're whittling them down, go through. Read your own summation like an editor. Read your own summation and highlight those phrases. There are millions of them. And then decide where you're going to expand and pull it apart like tack, right? If you say, so-and-so testified, now pick the big points. So-and-so testified in the grand jury that. Make a little note, expand, and then describe it, right? You can sum up for a nice long time and keep jurors interested. Also, imagine this. How many of you are intentional about your delivery? How many of you have charted out when you're going to be loud and when you're going to be soft? Have you ever seen music notations? You know what a crescendo and decrescendo look like? Right? Why ask when I can show? Right? This is start soft, get loud. This is start loud, get soft. Imagine just for a moment taking the time to think consciously about your delivery. Imagine for a moment that your words are musical, that your delivery is within your own control, and that in fact there are parts that you want to stress, and you can stress them, by the way, you can stress them either way. By getting really loud and forceful, soft that, because it's soft. Okay? You don't want to do the same thing all the time. If you're a one-note Johnny, they're just going to go to sleep. But if you go through and you figure out what's important, just take it and see. They're laughing at me. Shut up. You will be able to actually be able to control your own presentation. And imagine how powerful that might be to know when you're going to get loud and when you're going to get soft, what you're going to emphasize and what you're going to de-emphasize. I'm not asking you to write it out. I'm not asking you to bring it in and try to follow it. Because my belief is that by doing it, you will naturally internalize the rhythms of your summation. You'll remember. You'll know, oh shit, this is important. And you'll have, like bit by bit, point by point. And you'll have, by the way, what are we repeating over and over?
Not guilty.
Client's not guilty, and some themes, right? And those themes, the same things that you know at the beginning, because police officers stick together, right? It's a good theme, you know, because so-and-so's an inveterate liar, because whatever, those things, right? So if you're going through and you're talking about police officer testimony, and you're talking about why Officer Jones and Smith, okay, here's a jujitsu move. Imagine instead of seeing the congruence of their testimony as damaging for us, seeing it as evidence of collusion. Well, of course Jones and Smith say it was 20 feet. Cops back each other up. Of course Jones and Smith say they saw a guy who was 6'2" and 185 pounds. Police officers back each other up. Of course Smith and all of a sudden, we have taken one of their strong points, right, and just done a whole little jujitsu. We talked about their points of agreement and flipped it on its head by repeating our theme. And sometimes, as defense lawyers, that's all we've got. So you've got to make the most of those things. So, I'm going to stop in 1 second, but I'm going to remind you, use demonstrative evidence, right? Use the physical space of the court. Untangle those phrases, please. Use narrative detail. Practice. When you do your summations tomorrow, you in a group particular, I don't want a whole damn summation in 15 minutes. That's crazy. Not one of these problems is a 15-minute summation. All of these problems are at least an hour. So pick a part of the summation and do it with the same verb and the same detail that you would in a real trial. Okay? Don't just try to rush through and pack everything in. That will profit you not one bit. Take a piece of the summation and do it like you would. If you have 10 minutes, think about what you're going to do loudly and what you're going to do softly, what your important points are. Write out what your theme is for that section and repeat it at the end of every section. Use, if you can, demonstrative evidence. Anticipate what the prosecutor is going to say. And ultimately, bring it home. Bring it home to your client not being guilty. And hopefully the jury will do so.